If you're the kind of person who can't stop thinking about the truth once it's buried, then hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to hear stayed hidden for 40 years. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't just solve a murder. It destroyed everything the town thought it knew. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days when they found her. It was March 1985, a gray morning in Cedar Falls, Oregon, a quiet logging town surrounded by pine and silence. A young couple walking their dog through the old quarry trail stumbled upon something half-buried under the leaves and mud. At first, they thought it was a mannequin. But the closer they got, the colder the air seemed to grow. It wasn't a mannequin. It was a woman. The police arrived within minutes, red lights slicing through the mist. Sheriff Daniel Murdoch, a man whose boots had seen too many tragedies, knelt beside the body. The woman was young, maybe late 20s, her clothes soaked and torn. There was no ID, no purse, and no signs of struggle nearby. Only a small silver pendant on a chain, a heart split in two, with the name Anna engraved inside. They called her Jane Doe for weeks. The autopsy revealed she had been dead less than 24 hours when she was found. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the head. But no fingerprints, no witnesses, no vehicle tracks. Whoever did this knew these woods and knew how to vanish. Cedar Falls had its secrets, but this one unsettled everyone. People started locking their doors again. Murdoch ran every lead he could: missing women, nearby truck stops, transients passing through. Nothing matched. Until one day, a call came from Portland. A woman named Margaret Hale reported her sister, Anna, missing. She'd been traveling to visit a boyfriend in Cedar Falls, a man named Tom Bennett. When the sheriff's team brought Bennett in, he looked calm, too calm. Tall, quiet, clean-cut, the kind of man people trusted. He claimed Anna never made it to town. Said they'd argued on the phone days earlier, and she told him she wasn't coming. His alibi checked out. Co-workers confirmed he'd been on a night shift at the mill the night of her death. Without physical evidence, Murdoch had nothing. The pendant didn't prove a thing. Within months, the case went cold. But there was something about Bennett that haunted the sheriff. The way he looked at Anna's photo, not grief, not shock, just something else. Years passed. The quarry path was paved over. A small wooden cross marked where she was found. Eventually, the sheriff retired, and the case file joined hundreds of others in a dusty archive box labeled unsolved. In 2019, Cedar Falls was a different place. The sawmills were gone, the forests thinner, the old sheriff long deceased. But the town hadn't forgotten Jane Doe. The case still whispered through coffee shops and Facebook groups run by armchair detectives. That's when Detective Laura Kessler, part of Oregon's Cold Case Task Force, stumbled across the file. She was reviewing old homicide records for possible DNA testing, and Anna Hale's name caught her eye. The pendant, the clean body dump, the missing boyfriend. It all screamed precision, control, and unfinished business. The evidence was fragile, most of it degraded by time. But the coroner's office had kept one thing sealed since 1985, a small piece of fabric cut from Anna's blouse. It had faint traces of blood that didn't match hers. Kessler sent it to the new state forensic lab. And that's where things began to unravel. The lab ran a partial DNA profile, not complete, but enough to cross-reference against the national database. It came back with no match. Frustrating but expected. Then Kessler made a decision that changed everything. She sent it to a genealogical DNA company that worked with law enforcement. Weeks passed. Then an email landed in her inbox with a subject line that made her heart race. Possible relative match. Third cousin of unknown suspect. The match led to a sprawling family tree across Oregon and Idaho, hundreds of names, dozens of branches. But one name stood out. Bennett. Not Tom Bennett, but Eli Bennett, his son. Kessler dug deeper. Eli had been born in 1986, 1 year after Anna Hale's murder. His father, Tom, had lived just 3 miles from the quarry. She pulled the old files again. Back then, DNA was primitive. The technology to compare even partial profiles didn't exist. But now it did. Kessler requested a discreet warrant for a discarded item, a coffee cup from a gas station trash can that Eli Bennett had thrown away. The lab extracted DNA and compared it to the 1985 evidence. The result, a 99.98% paternal link to the unknown killer. 40 years later, the ghost of Anna Hale finally had a name, or at least part of one. But as Kessler prepared the report, something didn't sit right. Tom Bennett, the prime suspect, had died in 2005. So how did the blood at the scene, supposedly from the killer, contain both Bennett DNA and another unidentified strand? When the lab double-checked, the second DNA sequence wasn't a mistake. It belonged to someone else, someone still alive. And that's when the message arrived in Kessler's inbox. No name, no return address. Just 6 words that froze her to the core. You're looking in the wrong grave. If you've made it this far, you're one of the rare ones who doesn't just scroll past the truth, you chase it. So, before we go deeper, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to hear will make you question how justice really works. Detective Laura Kessler couldn't stop staring at the message. You're looking in the wrong grave. No name, no traceable IP, just an anonymous email sent through a secure server. It had arrived less than an hour after the lab confirmed the Bennett DNA link. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. She leaned back in her chair, the hum of the fluorescent light above her filling the silence. The case had gone from a quiet cold file to a live wire, and someone out there knew she'd reopened it. Her first call was to Captain Reed, head of the Cold Case Task Force. He listened quietly, then said, "Kessler, you're walking into something old and ugly. Be careful what you dig up. Some graves are deep for a reason." She didn't care. The email had just rewritten 40 years of certainty. That night, she drove to Cedar Falls, now a ghost town of empty storefronts and flickering neon signs. The old quarry trail was fenced off, swallowed by weeds and rust. She parked her car at the gate, rain tapping against the windshield, and scrolled through the digital archive of the 1985 crime scene photos. And then she saw it, something no one had noticed before. In one frame, just beyond the yellow tape, a man stood near the crowd of onlookers. The photo was grainy, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. But zooming in, Kessler noticed his hand, a silver band on the ring finger. The same design as the heart-shaped pendant Anna had been wearing when she died. Her pulse quickened. The file labeled him simply as unidentified bystander. But in small handwriting at the bottom corner of the evidence sheet was a note. Possible witness. T. Lang/local photographer. Kessler searched the old Cedar Falls Gazette archives. Thomas Lang had been a freelance photographer who'd covered community events through the 80s. He vanished in 1987, 2 years after Anna's death. Police reports said he left town suddenly, no forwarding address, no trace. But someone had sent that email. Someone who knew too much. The next morning, Kessler drove to the Hale family's old address in Portland. Margaret Hale, Anna's sister, was 68 now, frail but sharp-eyed. Her small apartment smelled of coffee and dust, and on the wall hung dozens of photographs of Anna, frozen in time. Margaret's hands trembled as she held the new DNA report. "I knew it," she whispered. "It was always Tom Bennett." "But what do you mean, the wrong grave?" Kessler hesitated. "I don't know yet. But I think someone else might have been involved, maybe more than one person." Margaret stared at her for a long moment before getting up and disappearing into her bedroom. She returned holding a small box. Inside was an old Polaroid, a faded photo of Anna and a man at a town fair. The man's face wasn't Tom Bennett's. "Who is that?" Kessler asked. Margaret sighed. "She never told us his name. Just said he was helping her with something, that he was dangerous." On the back of the photo, written in Anna's handwriting, were 3 words: "Trust only Lang." Kessler's instinct screamed. Lang wasn't a witness, he was connected. Maybe he disappeared not because he was guilty, but because he knew who was. She went back to the station and requested permission to reopen the Lang file. What she found shocked her. In 1987, Lang had been questioned in a different investigation, the disappearance of a local police evidence clerk named Cynthia Ward. She vanished the same week Lang left town. The official story said she'd run away after an affair with a married officer, but there were no follow-up reports, no search, nothing. Someone had buried her case, too. Kessler dug deeper, tracing Lang's social security number through decades of inactive records until a hit came up in a database from Northern California. An old death certificate under the name Thomas Kane, age 72, matching Lang's birth date exactly. Cause of death: heart failure. The man who might have held the truth had died a year before Kessler reopened Anna's file. Still, something didn't add up. Attached to Lang's old driver's license photo was a police note from 1985, the last time he was questioned. In the background of that mugshot, taped to the wall, was a photo of Tom Bennett, smiling, holding a baby. Eli. That night, unable to shake the feeling of being watched, Kessler locked up her office and walked to the parking lot. The cold air bit at her face. As she reached her car, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Detective Kessler. A low male voice replied, "You don't know what you're touching. Leave it buried." "Who is this?" No response. Just breathing. Then the line went dead. Her heart pounded as she looked around the empty lot. A dark sedan was parked across the street, engine idling. When she turned to look directly at it, the headlights flicked on, and the car slowly pulled away into the rain. Back inside, she opened the Lang file again. One photo stuck to the back of the folder, taken during the 1985 investigation. It showed Lang standing beside Sheriff Murdoch, both smiling. On the table in front of them was a camera, a coffee mug, and a sealed evidence bag labeled Hale Case #85-09. But it wasn't the original bag, the one that had been stored for decades in the state lab. It was a duplicate with different handwriting. She zoomed in on the tag. The evidence log number was off by a single digit. #85-09A. Her stomach turned. Someone had replaced part of the evidence years ago. Maybe even before the case went cold. That meant the blood sample that identified the Bennett DNA might not have been from the original crime scene at all. And if that was true, someone had been controlling the investigation from the start. Kessler leaned forward, staring at the photos spread across her desk. Anna, Tom, Lang, Sheriff Murdoch. There was a line connecting all of them, but she couldn't see it yet. Then her computer chimed. A new email. No sender. No subject. Just an attachment, a black and white image. She clicked it open, and her blood ran cold. It was a photo of her, standing in front of the Cedar Falls quarry that afternoon. Taken from the woods. If you've made it this far, you're officially part of the few who can handle the dark side of the truth. So hit that subscribe button, because after this chapter, you'll understand why some stories were never meant to be solved. Detective Laura Kessler stared at the photo on her screen, her own image, taken from the trees near the quarry. Whoever sent it had been close, watching her every move. She felt her chest tighten, her breath quicken. The case wasn't just cold anymore, it was alive, and someone didn't want it touched. She printed the image, slipped it into her notebook, and drove straight to Cedar Falls again. The road was slick with fog and drizzle, the town lights fading behind her. Her car's headlights cut through the darkness as she replayed every clue in her mind: the altered evidence bag, the anonymous emails, the Bennett DNA, the name Lang. Someone had rewritten history, and she was about to find out who. The old Cedar Falls police station had long been decommissioned, its wooden sign half-rotted, windows covered in grime. Kessler broke the lock with a warrant and flashlight in hand. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mold, untouched for decades. Old case folders lay stacked on rusted shelves, faded photos curling at the edges. She searched the archives for Sheriff Murdoch's files. It didn't take long to find them. Homicide 1985. Hale, Anna. The folder was slimmer than she expected, missing pages, redacted notes. Someone had gutted it years ago. Then she found something odd. Behind the file drawer, taped to the back wall, was a cassette tape, labeled in black ink. Sheriff Murdoch, personal copy, do not file. Her pulse jumped. She took it to her car, popped it into an old recorder she'd brought for evidence playback, and pressed play. Static. Then a voice. March 30th, 1985. Sheriff Daniel Murdoch recording. We've got a problem. The girl, Anna Hale, she wasn't supposed to die here. She was part of something bigger, something they told me to keep quiet about. Lang's got the negatives. If he talks, it all comes down. They said they'd handle it. But now she's gone and Bennett's panicking. God forgive me, I didn't sign up for this. Kessler froze. They said they'd handle it. Who was they? She rewound the tape, replaying the last few seconds. Murdoch's voice cracked at the end, like a man drowning in guilt. Then, faintly, another voice in the background, muffled but distinct. It's done. Get rid of her. Her stomach dropped. The voice wasn't Bennett's. It wasn't Lang's either. It was another man entirely. A man whose name was written on the original case report, the officer who logged the evidence, Deputy Frank Ward. The husband of Cynthia Ward, the clerk who'd vanished 2 years later. The puzzle snapped together with horrifying clarity. Cynthia hadn't run away after an affair. She discovered that her husband, Frank, had tampered with the evidence in Anna Hale's case, swapping samples, rewriting reports, burying what really happened. And when she threatened to expose him, she became his next victim. Lang must have known. That's why he disappeared. But the question that still burned in Kessler's mind, if Bennett's DNA was at the scene and the evidence was swapped, whose blood had really been tested? She called the forensic lab immediately. Rerun the blood test, she ordered. Check for mixed profiles, contaminants, any cross-transfer. Hours later, the call came back. The technician sounded nervous. Detective, we found a partial female DNA strand mixed with the original sample. It's a familial match to one of your recent database entries, to Cynthia Ward. Kessler's blood ran cold. Cynthia's DNA at Anna Hale's crime scene? It didn't make sense, unless Cynthia had been there the night Anna died. She retraced everything, the last known movements, the timing, the relationships. Anna was coming to confront Tom Bennett about something, but she never made it to his house. Murdoch and Ward were already in the area that night, supposedly responding to a noise complaint near the quarry. Anna wasn't a random victim. She'd seen something they were covering up. Digging through the cassette case, Kessler found one last scrap of paper folded beneath the tape. It was yellowed and brittle, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Lang's. If you find this, don't look for me. The body in grave 17 isn't hers. They buried the truth twice. Her breath caught. The wrong grave. Kessler drove straight to Cedar Falls Cemetery. It was nearly midnight when she arrived, rain slashing across her windshield. Grave 17 sat near the back, marked with a simple wooden cross. Cynthia Ward, 1958 to 1987. She called the coroner's office and requested an emergency exhumation order, officially citing evidence contamination. Hours later, under the flicker of halogen lamps and the steady hiss of rain, the coffin was raised. When the lid was pried open, the truth came spilling out in silence. The remains inside weren't female. They belonged to Tom Bennett, the man everyone thought had died in 2005. The next morning, news broke like wildfire. 40 years of lies unraveled in a single night. Forensic confirmation came within hours. Bennett's remains had been misidentified. Sheriff Murdoch and Deputy Ward had buried him secretly after a confrontation gone wrong in 1985. They'd framed him to bury their own guilt, planting his DNA at the crime scene to seal the lie. But the shock didn't end there. Inside Bennett's jacket pocket, preserved by time, was a folded letter addressed to Anna Hale. Anna, if you're reading this, it means I failed.
You were right about them.
They're using the logging company to move more than timber. I'll meet you at the quarry at sunset. Bring Lang. Don't tell Murdoch. A drug smuggling operation. The sheriff, his deputy, and a handful of town officials were using state shipments to move narcotics through rural Oregon. Anna had uncovered it, and she died for it. Lang ran. Cynthia discovered the cover-up and died next. Murdoch recorded his confession but never released it. And the town kept quiet because no one dared to believe the truth. Kessler stood at the edge of the graveyard as dawn broke, the rain easing into a mist. Reporters would swarm Cedar Falls soon, and the town would finally face what it had buried for 40 years. She closed her notebook, the final piece of evidence sealed inside. The case was over, but the cost of the truth lingered like fog over the pines. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. One new email. No subject. No sender. Just 2 words. Nice work. And attached, a photo of the exhumation that had happened hours ago, taken from the tree. Someone was still watching. They thought the truth was buried forever. But sometimes, justice doesn't rest in peace. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, and let's uncover the next secret together.